Hi, guys. Welcome back to Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another cool day for an interview, and I'm so honored to have Heather Hutchison with me. Heather is a singer-songwriter, an author who has recently published her memoirs, and she is here to share with me and with you guys out there her challenges with regards to suffering from a disability, in her case blindness, and at the same token mental health problems at a time when really the healthcare resources were strained to the maximum with COVID. So you can't get it more challenging than that kind of triple whammy here. And I'm so pleased that Heather is here in one piece as the voice of sharing her lessons and actually coming here to us and just exploring that. And maybe we can all learn from these lessons and see that we can make this world a little bit better. This interview and many interviews more to come. So guys, on that note, press the subscribe button down there and tell your friends about this show, because we have got so many beautiful, beautiful people that are coming onto this show. So many guests who have gone through hell and back and kept going and are now sharing their lessons, the lessons that they learned the hard way. And maybe you might just see that a little bit of a light in your own darkness to show you that it is not hopeless, it is not helpless, that there is a way forward, and that whatever crap is hitting your life at the moment, that life goes on and that you will be able to recover. So Heather, I'm so grateful to have you on my show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Heather, you have written your book, and we'll come to that in a moment. But was that when you were a little girl? Did you go to your mummy and say, "Hey, mummy, I'm going to write a book one day. I'm going to be a singer-songwriter and an award-winning author and all that. That's what I'm going to do"?
Actually, I kind of did. And then, as life goes on, you kind of lose that dream and you start maybe focusing on more realistic things. But oddly enough, I came back to both of those things because, I wanted to be a singer and an author. Those were kind of the two things.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Or a vet, but that never happened.
I think it's weird because we all are like that. I wanted to be a vet when I was a young boy.
Yeah.
And then I realized that actually helping humans is so much more rewarding. And then I went in to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And that is cool. But no, the singer-songwriter, wow. So were you always composing words and were you a wordsmith at an early stage?
Yeah, I would have like this old heavy tape recorder that I would carry around with me like forever since I pretty much learned to talk, and I would be, constantly dictating stories or writing songs, stuff like that. I remember being about 6 and I asked my brother to loan me $100 so I could record a CD, which obviously is not enough money to record a CD, but...
Excellent. Did he? Did he give you $100?
Yeah, he said he would loan it to me at like 20 or 30% interest. So very generous of him. But no, it took another 10 years before I actually started recording an album.
Excellent. But you did. You
Yes.
actually pursued your passion.
Yes.
What were your songs about? And what kind of music have you produced?
My songs have always kind of just been about the human experience. So when I started to get more serious into songwriting in my early teens, I was feeling, pretty alone. I was already struggling at that point with my mental health, and songs were really that creative outlet to actually sit down at the piano and really get out what I was feeling and kind of make sense of it. And then as I started sharing my music with more people, to have people come up to me after a show and be like, this song really helped me, or I was going through this and this song meant that to me. And it was just like to have that human connection gave me the purpose I needed to kind of carry on, even though I was struggling so much with mental health.
It's beautiful. And ultimately, writing songs or poetry can be such a revealing thing for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Often the emotions that we feel are sort of really like big waves that are crashing over us.
Mm-hmm.
And until you actually try to put these neurochemical waves into words, sometimes you actually can't even realize what is truly going on.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen to you, that when you actually started writing a song that you suddenly had a breakthrough to actually understand, that's actually why I feel so crappy at the moment. That is the focus.
Yeah, absolutely. In both the songs and then writing the book, I would say writing the book even more so, because putting all those things, kind of all the events into chronological order as I was writing the book, it was like, oh yeah, well, this happened probably because of that. And it just gave me, in songs and writing the book, it is huge for insight, I think, or journaling is another big one.
Exactly. And it just shows that ultimately us creating words and writing them down, or singing them in your case, is so beautiful, because it allows us to deal with our emotions in such a beautiful, constructive way, than rather being a hostage and a prisoner in this ongoing madness of inside our head.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say madness, I mean every single person out there, every single person, all the 9 or 10 billion that we've got at the moment, will have these weird thoughts of, I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, I am, the imposter syndrome. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You go up on stage and anyhow, you can't make money with that. You need to get a job. You need to get, all this kind of crap, that these belief systems that are deep inside of us. As far as you were starting out with this singing songwriting at an early stage, was that supported by your parents? Are your parents artistic, or?
No, actually, I'm the only one. I have one aunt who plays the piano, and that's literally the only person in my family, extended or otherwise, that has like any sort of musicality at all. But yeah, my family was actually really good about it, and let me take lessons and all those things. So yeah, they were supportive. Yeah, even though they didn't really play.
Cool. And it's interesting that you say they let you take lessons. So you actually took the lead there, and rather than the typical story that parents think that the child has to learn an instrument, forces them to get into guitar, flute, or piano, or whatever it is, and then the kids hate it. So it was other way around for you.
I did at first, because they did make me go into it at first, and then I went back to it as I got older and I was writing more songs, and I was like, oh, I actually need to learn to accompany myself, so I'm going to actually take this more seriously, because no, initially I didn't.
Cool. So the same fate.
Yeah.
Whatever mommy and daddy is saying is wrong. Okay,
yeah,
so it's
exactly.
Cool. so you're not different. I love that.
No.
And I think that's a fate of generations, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So cool. And who were your role models? Who was the music you listened to when you were younger? Who gave you hope initially?
Amy Lee from Evanescence. She was like my hero as I first kind of started more seriously songwriting. And I just really admired how, I don't know if you're familiar with their music, but No? Well, it's the music of sad teenagers everywhere from my generation, I guess.
Okay.
But I just loved how expressive she was about what she was feeling and stuff. And it was like, well, maybe I can do that too. Maybe that's okay.
Beautiful. So from the word go, it was more the emotional side, the human sensations and feelings that were the focus of both the music you listened to as well as the music you wrote.
For sure.
So you were never tempted to be a more political songwriter, the classic singer-songwriters of the 60s, 70s, Joan Baez and all these Janis Joplin, things like that. So you were not planning on going to Woodstock anytime soon.
No, I mean, my parents listened to that kind of music, so I was around it, but Yeah, when I
So,
started getting more my own taste, that wasn't really where I gravitated to initially.
no, fair call, fair call. Because sometimes when you have got a message, you're not clear from the word go what that message actually is.
Hmm.
So sometimes you go on detours, and so I am trying to figure out what was your detour. You were not a headbanger playing Bon Jovi at some stage, you know.
No,
So,
no. I had my goth phase. I had
oh,
like all
excellent.
the chains and the, dark eye makeup and long black hair and everything. So.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. I would love to see a picture of that.
Oh, they exist, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. Cringe-worthy as they were.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be interesting. Have you written songs during that period?
Yeah. Some of them are on Spotify. So.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I can't hide all of it. I can hide the pictures, but the music's out there.
But then again, that is life is a journey. And for crying out loud, it is you are the generic, the real thing. So your songs are reflecting that, and that's beautiful. You are not a product of a record label.
No.
That you're not a brand that stays exactly the same. Taking Bon Jovi, as I just said, they made it clear that they stayed in more or less the same kind of way, a very successful way. But there were no going off the deep end with some psychedelic kind of music. No, they stuck to what was working. Whilst you, obviously, you've tried to figure out what was working. And that is so beautiful to see.
Yeah.
So you were writing the songs, and did that make you money?
I mean, yes, but not really in the traditional way that people think. Everybody gets rich, and you're either super rich or you're super poor.
Exactly.
I think when they think about musicians, things have definitely gotten more challenging over the past number of years, even before COVID.
Yeah.
I don't really know what's going to happen with the music industry, especially now, but it was honestly struggling even before COVID because of Spotify and, people not buying records anymore. So recorded music is really expensive to produce, and it's essentially worthless now because of streaming.
Very interesting, isn't it? And in all fairness, I love, of course, these kind of services, because it gives me actually access to people that normally I would have never listened to. Recently, I found quite a lot of really young singers with fantastic voices, with fantastic passion in their voices, and love to hear their renditions of older songs.
Yeah.
Wow, blows me away. So well done to that. So that's the good side of it. But of course, yes. Okay, how do they get the money?
Yeah, exactly. I'm guilty too. I have Spotify and everything. I held out for as long as I could for a lot of years, but I love it too. Like discovering new music and everything, the curated playlists and everything is awesome. So there definitely is the good side to it as well.
It is. So, okay, but then again, this might be the revolution that the music industry needs, because after all, the music industry was an interesting beast. So if you were to become the flavor of the month, then you were the flavor of the month. But that's what, 1 in 10,000 chance for a band?
Probably even less.
Oh, less. Yeah, that's true. The 10,000 was the 90s and to early 2000s from memory. Yeah, you're right. And there were some strong gatekeepers, and all the problems that flew on from that, the Me Too movement and all those kind of things, where essentially there was a very dark underbelly to the music industry and any kind of entertainment industry.
Yes.
So, oh God, who knows where this is going?
Yeah.
But in your case, I mean, your passion will not stop right now just because there's a challenge. On the contrary, I think I can't wait to hear more songs there coming out from you, because you're obviously this is something that is a passion.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you have turned into a mission and first vision and then mission, but you keep going, and then suddenly this idea of the book came along. What was the catalyst? What made you think about writing a book?
So well, people have always kind of said, oh, you should write a book. And I've kind of been like, well, no, like what? I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple months before I was hospitalized, I was talking to my therapist and I was like, you know what? I could write a book about all the shit people do and say to me in public because I'm blind. And he kind of stopped and went, well, maybe you should. And I was like, I don't know. And then I was in the hospital one night and I was laying awake. I couldn't sleep. And somebody was flown in by air ambulance in critical condition. And as soon as they got there, they called a code blue and everything. And I was laying there listening to all this go on and thinking, like, my God, this poor person's family and their loved ones, they must be having one of the scariest nights of their lives. And I started thinking about my own loved ones and thinking, how can I feel so much compassion for this person's loved ones while knowing the decision I want to make will devastate my own? And I started thinking about the person and thinking about how they were fighting to live in the same place that I was fighting to die. And I realized that I had a choice, and I felt like I had come to this crossroads. I could either live or I could die. And if I chose to live in that moment, then I knew I had to do something good from a really difficult situation. So in that moment, I kind of realized, no, I need to get well enough to get out of the hospital so I can tell my story.
Wow. How did depression manifest itself for you? I mean, you obviously had a long history of it, but how did it feel for you, and what were the important bits or the important aspects of it for you? How would you describe it to a friend?
Yeah, how do you describe depression? It's such a complex thing, I think, to describe to somebody who's never experienced it, because they kind of think, oh, it's sadness.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than sadness. So I would go through like major depressive episodes. Sometimes they would last a couple of weeks. Sometimes it would be a couple months. I would stop eating. I would stop sleeping. My hair would fall out. I would have suicidal ideation. So all that kind of thing. And I would be so tired, but completely unable to sleep, but all you want to do is sleep. So it's this pain that's like pretty indescribable, I think, if you haven't felt it. I don't know that there's much worse than feeling that severe depression.
You're so right. You're so right. Recently, I had a guest who is a tetraplegic, who has basically had a spinal cord injury. And one of the words he said was that the depression paralyzed him so much more than his spinal cord injury did.
Yeah.
And I think that's sad. That said a lot. And it is so true. Depression I describe it as a chameleon, because it basically comes in so many shapes, forms, sizes. Sometimes it's as quiet as a ghost in the night, and sometimes ghosts are not quiet in the night, are they? So that's actually a bad example.
True.
They typically come with rattles and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you're noticing them.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I guess I need to find a different picture. But yeah, I guess you get where I'm coming from. It can be very, very, very insidious. And so slowly in its onset that you're just sort of sliding into it, because it's so slow, you're not recognizing it immediately for what it is.
It's that spiral.
Isn't it? Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can be so vicious. And it is, and you experienced it a few times. Did it become easier for you to recognize what was going on? Or did lack of insight remain part of the problem?
No, I think it did get easier, and it certainly has since I've come out of the hospital. But I think what kind of led me to the hospital was not being able to get that outpatient help. So I knew it was happening, but there wasn't really anywhere, I guess. I was
Sure.
still had some outpatient counseling services, but it was all over the phone. All my
Sure.
doctors and therapists were only talking to people over the phone. They weren't even doing video calls. So
Oh,
they
wow.
really didn't see what was happening, and there just wasn't quite enough support. So I couldn't, I would say I knew it was happening, but I couldn't get it under control.
That's, of course, that's the tricky bit, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
With COVID, you suddenly had this revolution of healthcare system happening where we had to completely change the way we were doing it
Yeah.
from a doctor's point of view. And I utterly hate phone consults. I'm an anesthetist, so I send people off to sleep for elective surgeries nowadays. And I make a point of actually meeting people face to face before their surgery so
Oh,
that they
nice.
can look me in the eyes, that they
Yeah.
can get to know me, that they can hear my voice and figure out that I'm actually quite not a bad dude, and that I will do my utmost to look after them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, much of that, 95% of that is nonverbal communication, the way I hold myself, etc. Many of these things will not be able to be done over the phone.
Yes.
And therefore, doctors were shying away from that. Suddenly they had to do it. So it's awful. So therefore, because we're not used to it, we are also not so good in it. And there's a steep learning curve to doing telemedicine, so to speak. And it's chaotic. And you were caught up in exactly that.
Yeah.
There was no rule book how to do that. There was no easy way forward, neither for you nor for the doctors on the receiving end.
Yeah, everyone was doing their best, but
Exactly.
it was so unprecedented. Nobody really knew what to do.
Exactly. But I'm so pleased that ultimately there was actually a room for you in the healthcare system that you could seek the help that you needed at that moment in time. It is certainly our hospitals here in New Zealand, when our first scare with COVID happened, they basically closed off every service there and brought in big refrigerated containers, not for the care of the people in the summer, rather to keep the corpses fresh. That was actually the kind of attitude. So therefore, a mental health problem or inpatient care for less urgent things was immediately culled.
Yes.
So here you are. You were actually, you were extremely lucky, in my opinion.
I know, yeah.
How did you, how did you get so lucky? I.e., yeah, exactly. You know what I'm alluding to. I mean, your depression must have been deemed serious enough, and you were already alluding to it, that you were there doubting if you wanted to continue to live.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was admitted as an involuntary patient, which kind of wasn't my plan. I actually went willingly to the hospital, but I went looking for absolution. I didn't want to get better. I had no interest in it. I didn't think it was possible, but I went because I figured that my family and friends afterwards would want to know that I had tried something, after I was dead. So I went there, and my whole plan was that they were going to be like, oh, you're fine, go home, all this COVID stuff, everything going on. It didn't work out that way. My plan failed, so.
Interestingly enough, though, so you had a concrete suicide plan?
Yes, yeah.
How long have you had this plan?
It's changed over the years, but it's always kind of been something that I've kept, I guess, in my back pocket. Like I kind of describe it as somebody carries around like a lucky penny or something like that, something that like brings them comfort in times of stress. So I kind of hung on to that, but it was never like I'd never decided really on a time or date or anything like that. It was just always like, oh, if things get bad enough, then I can. But then when COVID came, I was just coming out of a major depressive episode, and I ended up going way back into it. And there was so much that we couldn't control, and control is like one of my big things. I need to control everything. So in a world that was so chaotic and out of control, I decided that the only thing that I could control was how and when I would die. So I made those plans, and I figured, okay, I'll go to the hospital. It'll make people feel better afterwards, and then they'll let me out and I'll go home and I'll die.
But that was not meant to be.
No, apparently
Someone listened to you and listened in between the lines.
Yes.
And understood where you were at.
Yeah.
Who was that person?
Well, they first had me talk to a crisis nurse, and she kind of said, well, not really sure what we're going to do. We're going to have to bring in an ER doctor, and she'll have to make the decision and do the paperwork. So I talked to the crisis nurse first, and then I waited a couple hours, and the ER doctor came in, and she was fantastic. She was super nice, and she just said, yeah, we're going to keep you. You're going to be admitted. You're not going home tonight, and you'll talk to the psychiatrist in the morning, because at that point it was getting kind of late. They'd done their rounds and everything. So they, just basically kept me in the psych ER for a couple of days until they were actually able to move me onto a different ward.
Psych ER.
Yeah. Maybe is it different there? I don't know.
Hell, we don't have a psych ER.
No? Okay.
No,
okay.
We are a town of 60,000 people. We have got a beautiful hospital there, but our mental health services are unfortunately overstretched, and that's the story of New Zealand. We're a smallish country, and regrettably, the needs of our patients are often far bigger than what the healthcare system can provide you with.
Yeah,
that is the naked truth and the brutal truth that many people don't want to accept as what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing in Canada. I just, for whatever reason, got really lucky.
I'm so pleased for you. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Maybe I should actually try to get your ER doctor on the phone and A, say thank you, and B, maybe get this person even onto my show.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
The uncaped heroes of this world. There is one of them, or in this case, she probably came with a big invisible set of angel wings. But she was there for you.
Yeah, the healthcare people, I don't know, they were so amazing. Like, just watching them work through, because they had so many more restrictions and things that they were working under, and just giving like the kindest care and just really trying when nobody knew what the hell was going on. They really are just absolutely incredible.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, how long were you admitted?
9 days.
Okay, so that was relatively short, but it was probably 9 days that were a lifesaver.
Yeah.
What got you out of that deep, deep, dark night of the soul?
Well, I think 9 days actually in Canada, speaking of the lack of mental health care, is actually fairly long, because it's all public health care. So, they you're still bleeding and they kick you out.
Right. Okay.
I was even really lucky, I think, to have gotten the chance to stay there as long as I did. I know a lot of people look at it as, an inconvenience, because it is. You get your freedom taken away. You don't get to do anything. They take your clothes. They take your everything, right?
Of course.
At the time, it's like they read you your rights, kind of like you're being arrested. But yeah, I was really fortunate to get to stay there as long as I did, which, probably saved me, because I think if I'd spent a day or two, I would have gone home and still not felt any better. And I think what really did save me was that night, that person coming in, that patient, and really having that idea. And then it gave me the purpose that I needed to actually, cooperate with the doctors and nurses, be an active part of my treatment plan. because I had this thing that I needed to do once I got out of the hospital that didn't include dying. So yeah, I think it was that, and just really, yeah, because actually the next day after that revelation was actually a really awful day. Like, things got way worse before they got better, but I think I was so shell shocked before that I just, like, I had no emotions. And then the day after, something happened in group therapy, and I went back to my room and I just felt like this most profound grief ever. And one of the psych nurses actually came and sat with me for a while, and then they actually did sedate me, because there was just, it was honestly probably the kindest thing to do, and just, okay, you go to sleep, we'll try again tomorrow, sort of thing. And I think that was really the pivotal turning point of things for me.
And isn't it bizarre? Because I loved what you just said. There was suddenly this wave of emotion. And for someone who hasn't had depression, it is so bizarre. Hang on, is depression not an emotion? Why is there a wave of emotion? Depression can be this emptiness, this complete loneliness, this vacuum, this void of absolutely anything pleasant. And sometimes even you go beyond unpleasant. You just don't give a fuck anymore. It's just emptiness. And that is, I guess, what you described there. And then suddenly there was this wave of grief coming over you. And that is so beautiful. You actually felt something, yet it is scary because you feel something. And it's not a nice thing, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. And it's just the weight of the world all of a sudden, after feeling so numb. And then you just feel the weight of the world, and it's just like devastating, but it clearly needed to happen.
When you say the weight of the world, does that mean shame and guilt, or what do you mean with weight of the world?
Yeah, the shame, the guilt, like, how the hell did this happen? How did I end up here? You know, this isn't how my life was supposed to go. Nobody as a little kid is like, yeah, I'm going to get involuntarily admitted to the psych ward. Nobody wants that. Nobody plans for that. Exactly. So yeah, just all of that. And you know, the grief of the past and the fear for the future, because I was actually thinking I might have a future, and that was pretty scary. So all of that was just the weight of the world.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Because that's part of your journey. That is the part of being in recovery, is such a beautiful, beautiful path. And when I say recovery is typically sort of reserved as a description for getting better after sobriety, or as part of sobriety, as after addiction. In reality, recovery is so much more. It is trying to make sense out of what has happened to you in the past, of trying to define a new future for yourself and taking steps towards that. That is recovery. And it doesn't matter if that is after a major depressive episode or if it is after you having a complete spin out with drugs. It doesn't really matter.
No, that's perfect. It's so true.
And it is, and on that note, I recently had a guest, she described herself as an recovering depressive. And I actually liked that.
I like that.
She was, and it's interesting, her story was, it's not yet aired, so I won't give too many details away, but her story was essentially equally there, because her recovery, her getting better from her depression, was influenced by the fact that she could not get access to the treatment services similar to you. And so she had to find her own ways, and she had to come up with daily micro habits and daily things that she could do to actually move forward. And so it was not necessarily for a lack of, well, it wasn't, certainly a bit of a lack of medical help there, lack of access to medical help, that allowed her to become active, that forced her to take steps and figure out if these steps are actually productive and moving forward. And that actually worked for her. So I think we will see many more stories coming out like yours and this other guest who due to these very bizarre circumstances that we live in right now, with this pandemic that is wiping out whole generations of the elderly and now starting to affect the younger generations. So here we are, and you are living proof of this social revolution, the social upheaval that we are facing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it's so important that you've put it into a book, that you've put your words down on paper, because this is uncharted territory. This is people. Well, okay, let's go one step back. It's not uncharted territory. We've been here before, 1919. Okay, and
after, long time ago.
Well, exactly right. The living memory is long gone. The people who have learned the lessons, they never wrote them down. They never gave on those lessons of desperation, of their insights, their trauma. After the Second World War, same thing. A whole generation became the silent generation. They wanted to move on. They didn't want to share their experiences. And nowadays, luckily, we've got different media. We've got ways of self-publishing. We've got ways of many different things where we can make a difference. We can share our lessons that we have learned, and therefore show others that there is help and hope. And that's exactly what you have done with your book.
Yeah.
So, and for that, I'm very grateful, because you have taken steps to make this world a little bit better by sharing honestly.
That's the hope.
Yeah, no, that's the whole thing, isn't it? That's
yeah.
Show us your book, please, please. There you go. Holding On by Letting Go. And that is such a beautiful title. What does it mean to you? Why did you choose that?
I think I was actually talking to one of my friends. She read one of the really early drafts, and I was kind of like, what's the overall theme to you? And she kind of said surrender. And I thought, yeah, it is surrender, but surrender is different than giving up. It's surrendering to the things about us that we can't change. And in letting go of those things, we are able to hold on to, the bigger picture, which for me was life.
Ah, beautiful. Indeed, holding on to what is important, life. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, power to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Mm-hmm. A beautiful little prayer that I've got around my neck, that I got myself on my first day out, the first day out of my rehab. We went to a shopping mall, because like you, I got myself admitted voluntarily, well, kind of voluntarily, shall I say. My wife got me admitted to a rehab hospital, and voluntary contract. So I gave up my powers for a month. And basically, you were compulsory inmate. You were not going out for the first 2 weeks, which really pissed me off. But
I can relate.
Exactly. And it's very, very weird to get that kind of lack of control. But it was exactly what I needed. I needed to be stripped down from the bullshit that I told myself, from I need to be taken out into a protective bubble where I could actually rebuild myself and literally look long and hard at myself, and not being overwhelmed by all the things that were my previous life. Mm-hmm. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. So, but having said that, I remember that feeling of incarceration, of being, and we jokingly called ourselves inmates. And so it is like that. So
yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
But then we had on a Wednesday, they organized, okay, we can go out to a shopping mall for 2 hours, and they would drive us there and then wait for us, etc. And that was cool. And so I organized that with my wife, and she then came the first time. So that was beautiful. And I lived my life by that. And in weird terms, that was exactly the first thing that struck me when I walked into the rehab center. There was a big Serenity prayer was there, written in huge letters on the wall. And I thought, wow, they hung that up for me. How did they know how I felt? And only then did I realize that actually for 100 years, hundreds of years, that serenity prayer is actually, guidance for so many people like us out there.
Yeah.
And in my case, I got introduced to it with alcohol. In your case, you got exactly introduced to the same topic, just in a different way with your depression.
Absolutely.
And it just shows how important it is in daily lives.
Yeah, I think emotion is emotion, no matter what the cause, whether it's alcohol, whether it's depression, we can all kind of relate to similar things in that recovery, like you were talking about.
How beautiful. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took, it's hard to say because, so much, the writing is the easy part, and then you got to go back and edit it and hire an editor, and then, go back through all their changes. And it's like a little bit soul crushing because you get it back and it's like, all these like red marks all over it. And you're like, man, but that's my story. But it probably took a couple months to actually write. I worked backwards. So I did the days in the hospital as soon as I could when I got home so that they were kind of fresh in my mind, and then worked backwards from there. But probably a couple months and then a few months of editing, and all told it was probably about a year from start to finish before it came out.
Beautiful. And that is in its own right a huge therapy, isn't it? Because you're opening up wounds that you thought had long healed. And guess what? Pus is coming out.
Yep, not quite. Still there.
Same here. I wrote My Steps to Sobriety. I wrote it probably similar, the first draft over 2 months, then a bit back and forth. And I published, about half a year later, I published the first draft, or the first version of the book. And it was all self-published. And then I thought, okay, bit later on, another year later, I decided now I want to have a publisher, refresh it, etc.
Okay.
Now there started the journey, because I thought I had come to terms with it, and my publisher said, no. You hide behind quotes of others. You hide behind things. I want to hear the real you. And so there I went back and dug deeper and dug deeper and dug deeper. And bloody hell, what a freaking roller coaster again it was. Because it is, once you start dealing with the past and do really a honest and brutal inventory of what really has occurred, you sooner or later not just come to those things that have occurred to you, but you also come to the point that maybe you took part of these things that happened to you, and that maybe you had a role to play in those things that happened to you.
We're not passive in this life. We're active participants in our own lives. So
how did you deal with that? How did you deal with these revelations that sort of came to you where you thought, oh shit? For example, when I wrote my book, and I wrote a chapter, a postnatal depression, about my wife's story and how I recalled it, and I gave it for her to read, and I thought, no, it's all good. And my goodness, did we have a row on that day, because she was very, very upset. She had a very different recollection of the same time.
Yes.
There you go. So that happened. You say totally. So that happened to you as well.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common, pretty universal when we're writing. Memoir is hard because we're writing about people who are still alive, who, our own backgrounds and our own experiences shape our memories, and their own backgrounds and experiences shape theirs. And, the truth is probably somewhere in between. But I kind of rationalized it with, this is my experience. I'm telling my experience and how I saw it. And this is how I felt about this experience, which shaped my perceptions going forward. So, my experience is kind of what counts in this story. And, if they want to tell their experience, they can write a book too. Beautiful. No, there is the real ownership of saying, actually, you know what, guys, you might disagree with that opinion or that story as I told it. But in reality, I have actually thought long and hard about it. And that is the way I perceived it. And that is the way I lived it. And if you don't like it, that's really your journey.
That's really where you need to come to terms with certain things.
Yeah.
And that's actually quite hard. That's actually quite...
It was a process. There were a lot of sleepless nights like, oh my God, how is this person going to react? Or,
exactly.
What if this person takes this thing I said a different way and they think that I actually meant, you overanalyze everything. And then it actually comes out and people, usually it's not actually as bad as you think it's going to be.
Good. And if it is, then maybe this was actually a conflict waiting to happen, and a conflict that needed to happen for you both to move on, and or to at least come to terms with that you have got that you agree to disagree on certain things. But at least, again, you can put closure to something that maybe was still quietly festering and was quietly waiting to go boom in the night. Yeah, it is what it is. You took action, and it is a very, very beautiful feeling, isn't it? To actually complete the first draft, to actually stand back and think, wow, did I do that?
Yeah. Or to hold it in your hands the first time when it comes back from
it's beautiful, like, isn't it? Exactly.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps.
It's like that with like all my albums, and then this book was the same thing. Like you finally open that box and hold it in your hands, and you're like, this is why I did it.
And that is a moment of success. That has nothing to do with vanity. This is an achievement that you need to be proud of. And the same as with your songs. The moment you hear that song being played somewhere, it is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Oh, excellent. Oh, Heather, it is. You've put so much of your soul in your writing, both in your songs as well as into your book. You have come a long way too, over years now. What would be the message that you would send back to your younger self?
Don't be so mean to yourself. You're so cruel to yourself, and you don't need to be.
Isn't it? We are very good in that. We're so good in that.
Too good.
Hypercritical and putting us down. Who do you think you are writing a book? Who do you think you are going onto that stage? Yeah, right. Yeah. So how do you tell that voice to shut up?
Yeah, that's the question.
No, $1 million question.
I guess that's where CBT and stuff comes in.
Yep. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's basically a way of learning to recognize what is happening in your body and in your mind, and why you behave the way you do behave. So it's actually a beautiful thing that can help so many people. Was it scary to interact with healthcare professionals? Was it scary to interact with counselors?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been in and out of therapy for, I guess, since I was 13, so on and off. So that part of it was I guess, semi-familiar, but the hospital, like being in the hospital environment, being, essentially detained involuntarily, as you said, like incarcerated, that was kind of the difficult part. And I guess talking to the psychiatrists and things, I hadn't had a psychiatrist at that point. They were actually trying to get me in right as COVID hit, kind of thing. And my therapist was like, oh, the soonest I can get you in to see a psychiatrist is 2 months away. I'm going to try to move it up because this is super urgent, but no promises. And, if the hospital hadn't taken me, I wouldn't have survived to that appointment. So, so I'd never had a psychiatrist before. So I guess that was like a little bit intimidating, but mainly just the hospital environment, I think, it's not as bad as people think, but it can be a little bit intimidating, and it is something to get used to. It was definitely helpful, but it is, I mean, there's certain things that you remember from your time there that you can't really even talk about with other people who haven't been there and experienced the same thing. So it can feel a little bit isolating, but I definitely don't want to like discourage people from going, because I think it's so critical.
I would even go one step back, because the sheer fact when you are in a situation where your life was more or less okay, and then suddenly a major depressive episode hits you, which is not an uncommon scenario, then there is all these kind of myths and weird prejudices, and people will hold out. They think, oh my God, this is no, I'm not so bad, I don't need to see any, what could they anyhow do? And then your mind comes up with all these stupid things, basically because you're afraid. And there might be shame and guilt, and there might be denial and many other emotions there. But I guess the message that I want to send out there to any viewer or listener who recognize themselves maybe being at that stage, if you just watch the Olympics, do you really think that any of these Olympians any of these sportsmen and women did not have a performance coach? Every single one of them will have had a coach, AKA a psychologist, a performance psychologist to help them. Every CEO from a top 500 company will have their coach, their life coach, etc., AKA psychologist, counselor, mentor, etc. So here are all these successful people who in their daily life make use of psychologists, of people who can look at the mind, can look at you, how you cope, what your belief system is and how that influences your actions, and maybe can guide you towards maybe a more productive way of looking at things and maybe dealing with things. But here you are right now, knee deep in shit mentally. And we think, no, I can do it all myself. No, I'm a strong man. I'm the breadwinner here. I will not need help. Or I'm a strong woman. I'm an emancipated woman. I can work 5 jobs, have 3 children, and not sleep, and I feel good. Bullshit. Okay.
Exactly.
So no, please, guys. It is beautiful once you find the right person with whom you gel, and who you go into a relationship with, and this person starts to help you. And it's not just once off, you talk a bit and then you're better. It's the same as if you say, well, I go to the gym on Saturday and that's it, just one gym session and I'm going to be healthy for the rest of my life. It doesn't work like that. And it's the same with seeking help for mental health problems. It will take you some time to address the current acute problem, but that's only the start of a beautiful journey. Because then, now that you have started actually opening up the wounds and letting the pus drain out, it's the same as if you start going to the dentist with a whole lot of rotten teeth. They can't just do everything to all the teeth. They start with one, and suddenly you realize, the pain is much better. But there's still some other holes and some other fillings that need to be done. So this is not a quick fix for you, and mental health is the same. And it's a beautiful journey. Certainly for me, it is that the last 8 years have been an absolute beautiful journey of discovery, where every day I get to learn new things about myself. I get to meet fantastic people here on my show, and the collaboration keeps going. So every day, like today, I've got Heather on my show, and earlier on I had another interview. So I just had 3 hours of therapy. Thank you very much. And I didn't have to pay $1 for it. I love it. So therefore, it's actually really, really cool. So, and that is the active choice that I do. I look after myself by doing this show. I look after myself by good nutrition and by being active, all these kind of things. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But I can only do that because I've seen the darkness. I have been in some very, very, very dark places where I thought that there is no hope, that there's no way out. Well, there's one way out. That's similar to what you said. these thoughts can come. They can be scary, but it's about, what is it, between 6 and 9% of the American population in the last year has had suicidal ideation. So that's 1 in 20 to 1 in 10. And that is a whole lot of people. So therefore, if you are suddenly having these thoughts, then take it as a message from your body that something needs serious attention. Don't get spooked by it. Certainly don't follow through. Just say that your body is in distress, that your mind is in distress, that your soul, your heart is in distress, and try to figure out what's going on. And then maybe similar to as you go to a doctor when you have broken your bone, well, maybe go to a doctor with your broken soul and open up and say, hey, I had this little accident, whatever accident that was that caused your soul to fracture. Can you help me mending it? And did you hear what I said, guys? Can you help me mending it? So not, can you mend it for me? That doesn't work so well in mental health. It is more, mental health is about you doing the hard work, but rather instead of being crazy and paddling on one spot in the sea, you actually try to look around and say, where's land? Ah, there is land. Okay, now we make actually, instead of paddling, we swim into that direction there, rather than just floating and never getting anywhere. So guys, this is all waiting for you. And if Heather can do it, and if I can do it, tell me again, what stops you? No, I can't hear it either. No, yeah. Heather, what are sort of the parting words that you would tell people as far as your journey is concerned? What is sort of the message that you would love people really to go away with when they finish this tape?
Yeah, I think what I wouldn't tell people is, tomorrow's a better day. It gets better, empty platitudes, because it's all a little bit bullshit. And I would, I remember when people would say that to me when I was going through it, and that would be like the exact point I would stop listening.
Exactly.
But what I can tell people is that I promise you there will come a day when you will feel so much joy in a moment, and you'll stop in that moment and you'll think to yourself, I would have missed this. And I hope with all my heart that you will hang on for that day and that moment.
And that's so beautiful to say. That's absolutely true. See, you're a better wordsmith than me because your words came out better there. But I loved it that you picked me up on that, because I absolutely agree with that. That is, I can remember when people told me that he's going to be fine. Fuck off! It's not going to be fine. No, exactly. No, you're so right. You're so right. Heather Hutchison, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you.
If that resonates what you said with them, how can they get hold of you? Where can they get more information about you?
They can visit my website at www.heather-hutchison.com, Hutchison. I'm on Facebook at Heather Hutchison Music, Instagram, Heather Hutchison Music, Twitter, HL Hutchison. Basically, anywhere you can go to my website, and all my social links are there, and my links to my music and my book and everything is all on that website. So.
Beautiful. And guys, just look down there into the description of the video and of the podcast. Everything is down there in the show notes. And once you're down there, press the subscribe button. And when you have subscribed, then you might as well think, hey, I should talk to at least three people that I care about that cool show that this dude is doing, where he's bringing on people who have gone through hell and back and who kept going and are now sharing their precious stories and the precious lessons that they have learned, where they open up in complete humility and are demystifying mental health problems and being open. And that is this power that we have, that Heather, you and I have taken on. That's our superpower, that we have learned from the lessons, and that we are now shouting from the rooftops that there is hope. And that is a superpower that I will not never want to miss. And until I die, I will actively use that power to hopefully make this world a little bit better, just as much as you do with your songs and with your book. So thank you so much for coming onto my show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And you guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.